Hello, everyone. In the previous episode, we told you how Yosef passed away and his coffin was thrown into the Nile. The Egyptians saw that the Jewish people were multiplying and more children were being born. They were afraid that the Jews would outnumber them and then come and fight against them. At that time, a new king of Egypt arose who did not know Yosef or all the good he had done for Egypt. His name was Paro. By the way, all the kings of Egypt were called Paro. Some say he was a completely new king, and others say that his decrees were renewed. Paro saw that the Jewish people were multiplying and becoming a large and strong nation, and he was very afraid. What will happen if they become stronger than us? He thought with concern. Paro decided to go ahead with a terrible and dreadful plan. He turned the Jewish nation into slaves, but not just any slaves. He worked them very hard, forcing them to build cities and carry heavy bricks. He was sure that the mere fact they would work hard would exhaust their strength, and thus they would not multiply. But despite the hardship, the Jewish nation continued to multiply, and this angered Paro even more. At that moment, Paro issued a terrible decree. Every male child born to the Jews was to be thrown into the Nile. He called upon Shifra and Puah, who were actually Yocheved and Miriam. Yocheved was Moshe's mother, and Miriam was his sister. Miriam was called Shifra because she would beautify the baby, cleaning and washing him immediately after birth, and Puah because she would sing to him to calm him so he wouldn't cry. Paro said to them, "When you help a Jewish woman give birth, if you see it's a boy, throw him into the Nile River, and if it's a girl, let her live." But the righteous midwives did not listen to him, and because of this, Hashem gave them a gift. When Amram heard about Paro's decree, he divorced Yocheved, because he didn't want to have a child who would be thrown into the Nile. Miriam, his daughter, said to him, "Father, your decree is harsher than Paro's, because Paro only decreed against the boys, but by divorcing mother, you won't be able to have daughters either." Amram listened to his daughter Miriam and remarried Yocheved. Then a great light was born into the world, and his role was to save the Jewish nation. Yocheved managed to hide him for 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she took a small basket, coated it with tar and clay to make it waterproof, placed the baby inside, and set it among the reeds on the banks of the Nile. Miriam, the baby's older sister, stood at a distance to watch over him. At that time, Paro's daughter went down to the Nile and heard a crying sound coming from the basket. She reached out her hand to take the basket, and then a miracle happened. Her arm extended 30 meters. She saw a special light coming from the baby and decided to adopt him. She tried to bring him a nurse from the non-Jews, but the baby refused to nurse. Miriam saw everything and suggested bringing a Jewish nurse so that the righteous baby wouldn't nurse from a non-Jewish woman. So she managed to return the baby to his mother, Yocheved. Paro's daughter named the baby Moshe because she drew him out of the water. Moshe grew up in Paro's palace. It's told that Moshe would take Paro's crown and throw it to the ground. Yitro, who was Paro's advisor, suggested placing coals and gold before him. If he reaches for the gold, it means he's acting out of wisdom. And if he reaches for the coals, it will prove that he lacks wisdom. Moshe wanted to reach for the gold, but from the heavens, an angel came and directed his hand to the coals, and from then on, Moshe's speech became cluttered and he stuttered. When Moshe grew up, he went out to see his brothers, and he saw an Egyptian man beating a Jewish man. Moshe killed the Egyptian and buried him in the sand. The next day, Moshe came and saw a Jewish man hitting a fellow Jew. Moshe said, "Why are you hitting your friend?" The wicked man said to Moshe, "Do you want to kill me like you killed the Egyptian and buried him in the sand?" Moshe was alarmed and realized that the matter was known. He had to flee to Midian. In Midian, he met Zipporah, the daughter of Yitro, the priest of Midian. He converted her and married her. He was a shepherd. One day, when Moshe saw the flock near Mount Horeb, he witnessed an amazing sight. A bush, which is a thorny shrub, was burning with fire, but the fire did not consume it. Moshe approached and then heard the voice of God calling to him from the bush. "I have seen the suffering of the Jewish people and the hardship of their slavery. Go to Paro and take the Jewish nation out of Egypt." Moshe was alarmed and said, "Who am I that I should go to Paro?" Hashem said to him, "I will be with you." Moshe still refused, but out of humility, he didn't believe he was worthy to redeem the Jewish people. God gave him special signs so that they would believe him. He turned his staff into a snake. His hand became full of leprosy. Moshe was still hesitant because he stuttered. Hashem said to him, "I will give you Aaron to help you." Moshe set out and went with Aaron to Paro. "We come on behalf of God," they said. "Let the Jewish people go." Paro angrily replied, "Who is God that I should obey his voice?" He immediately called his officers and told them to make the Jews work harder, and from now on, don't give them materials for bricks. And so he made their work even harder. Moshe asked God, "Master of the universe, why have you brought harm to the Jewish people?" God answered him, "You will see what I will do to Paro and how he will drive them out of his land." What did Hashem plan for Paro? We'll tell you about that in the next episode.